Mary and Jean, both in the studio this morning to be your readers as for the Friday Saturday morning. And it looks like the two ladies are ready and ready to go to get started on the reading for you. So I'm going to head on over to the two of them and they're going to get right on it for you.
Thank you, Emily. Jean and I are here. Welcome, everyone, to the Saturday, April 9th sunrise edition of, well, the only edition of the Omaha World Herald. Jean and I are anxious to read with you today. And from the headlines, where will HDR go? Pope allows wiggle room for messy family life, and Damon will be in Omaha next week. And I'll start with some international news from Brussels. The arrest Friday of 5 men suspected of links to the Brussels bombings, including the last known fugitive in last year's Paris attacks, raised new questions about the extent of the Islamic State cell believed to have carried out the intertwined attacks that left 162 people dead in 2 countries. After 2 weeks of speculation about the mysterious man in the hat who escaped from the Brussels attacks while the other suicide bombers blew themselves up, authorities were checking whether this man was indeed Mohammed Abrini, the last identified suspect at large from the Paris attacks until Friday. Another man arrested in the series of raids, identified as Osama K by Belgian authorities, was linked to the November 13 Paris attacks by French authorities on March 22nd, hours after the Belgium attacks. Abrini and Osama K are now suspected of playing a role in the 2 biggest attacks carried out by the Islamic State in Europe over the past year, killing 130 people in Paris and 32 in Brussels. Very sad news there. And let's finish up this article. You know what, Gina? I'm going to let you go on and then I'll go.
Okay. And students are sleep deprived. Buckle up for bad news.
Well, that's true.
Texting behind the wheel, drunken driving, skimping on sleep. For teens, these are dangerous bedfellows. New research finds that compared to high schoolers who typically get 9 hours of sleep, those who get less shut-eye are more likely to drink and drive, text while driving, hop in a car driven by a driver who's drinking, and leave their seat belts unbuckled. But while dangerous behaviors escalated alongside lower levels of sleep, too much sleep also was correlated with risk-taking in teens. Among those who routinely slept more than 10 hours per night, researchers noted higher rates of drinking and driving, riding with a driver who had consumed alcohol. The National Sleep Foundation recommends that adolescents ages 14 to 17 get 8 to 10 hours of sleep per night. But most fall well short of that goal. Girls were less likely to get enough sleep than boys. 71% and 75% of Asian students were most likely surveyed to report insufficient sleep. In the study by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, researchers culled the survey responses of more than 50,000 teens. The teens were presented a range of risk-taking behaviors and asked whether they had engaged in any of them in the past 30 days. They were also asked about their sleep. Among adolescents, 2/3 of all fatalities are related to traffic crashes. Sleepiness impaired a teen's attention and reaction behind the wheel, which is bad enough. But the authors of the new report speculate about causal links. Chronic sleep shortage might also lead to poor judgment or a likelihood of disregarding negative consequences by taking chances. Compared with a teen getting the average 9 hours of sleep, a high schooler reporting 6 hours of sleep was 84% more likely to say he or she had consumed alcohol in the past 30 days. 42% are more likely to acknowledge that they had ridden in a car with an alcoholic driver. In the case of teens who sleep 10 hours or more a night, researchers suggest that depression might be the best explanation. Fewer than 30% of teens surveyed reported nightly sleep duration between 8 or 9 hours. Most had from 6 to 7 hours. Only 1.8% slept 10 or more. Teens' average propensities to engage in risky behavior were not reassuring. On the average, 26% reported they'd ridden in a car with a driver who had drunk alcohol at least once in the past 30 days and had texted while driving. 9% reported drinking and driving, and 8% reported infrequent seatbelt use.
Thank you. And continuing, French authorities renewed their call to arrest an armed and dangerous Albrini within hours of the Brussels attacks. We are investigating if Albrini can be positively identified as the third person present during the attacks in Brussels National Airport, the so-called man in the hat, said prosecutor Eric van der Sipt. The man walked away from the airport attack where 2 suicide bombers blew themselves up, killing 16. Other men identified and detained on Friday were suspected of having contact with the suicide bomber who blew himself up in the Brussels subway that same morning, killing another 16. Osama K. was filmed by security cameras in the City 2 shopping mall when the bags were bought that were used by the suicide bombers who attacked the airport. Belgian prosecutors said Abrini's fingerprints and DNA were not only in a Renault Clio used in the November 13 attacks in Paris, but also in an apartment in the Schaerbeek area of Brussels used by the Brussels bombers. Friday arrests were a rare success for Belgium authorities, who have been accused for months of mishandling the investigation. Both the Interior and Justice ministers had offered to resign before the arrests. Brussels remains under the second highest terror alert, meaning an attack is considered likely. Abrini's precise role in the Paris attacks has never been clear, nor his full link to the Brussels attacks. Abrini is a 31-year-old Belgian Moroccan known as a petty criminal before he was believed to have been traveled last summer to Syria, where his younger brother died in 2014 in the Islamic State's notorious Francophone Brigade. Abrini went multiple times to Birmingham, England last year, meeting with several men suspected of terrorist activity, a European security official has told the Associated Press. The official spoke on condition of anonymity. He said the meetings, including one later last summer, took place in several locations, including cafes and apartments. Abrini had not resurfaced since the emergence of surveillance video, placing him in the convoy with the attackers headed to Paris. He had ties to Mohammed Abad, the ringleader of the Paris attacks, who died in the police standoff on November 18th, and is a childhood friend of the brothers Salah and Brahim Abdeslam, both suspects in the Paris attacks. According to European investigative files obtained by Washington Post, Abrini appears as a key participant throughout the complicated logistics that preceded the Paris attacks. On November 11th, 2 nights before the assault, he was caught on camera just after 7 p.m. at a gas station in Oise, outside the French capital. With him was Salah Abdeslam, another principal organizer of the attacks, who was apprehended by French and Belgian authorities in the Brussels neighborhood of Molenbeek on March 18th. Abdeslam will eventually be sent to France, where he will stand trial for his role in the attacks. But on Friday, Jean-Jacques Hervois, the French justice minister, said the extradition order would be delayed for now because of the requirement of the investigation in Belgium.
And global warming is changing how the Earth wobbles.
Yeah, I heard that.
Global warming is shifting the way that the Earth wobbles on its polar axis. Melting ice sheets, especially in Greenland, are changing the distribution of weight on Earth. That has caused both the North Pole and the wobble, which is called polar motion, to change course. Scientists and navigators have been accurately measuring the true pole and polar motion since 1899. For almost the entire 20th century, they migrated a bit toward Canada, but that has changed, and now it's moving toward England. The recent shift from the 20th century direction is very dramatic. Scientists say it's harmless, but it is meaningful. It highlights how real and profound the impact that humans are having on the planet. Since '03, Greenland has lost an average of more than 600 trillion pounds of ice a year.
Oh.
That affects the way the Earth wobbles in a manner similar to a figure skating, lifting one leg while spinning. Irvin said he likes to think of it as 1 billion trucks each year dumping ice out of Greenland. On top of that, West Antarctica loses 275 trillion pounds of ice, and East Antarctica gains about 165 trillion pounds of ice yearly. This all helps to tilt the wobble further. They all combine to pull polar motion toward the east. John Chen, a research scientist at the University of Texas, first attributed the pole shift to climate change in 2013. This new study takes his work a step further. It's an interesting effect of climate change.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it?
The Earth has actually changed its polar thing in the past, like trillions of years ago. That actually changes the whole face of the Earth.
Great.
Yeah, we might be living in the tropics tomorrow.
Oh, well, I'd rather tropics than ice age, but I don't know. Life gets messy. Pope Francis understands that, and his compassion is reflected in a major church document on family life, local Catholics and clergy say. The Pope emphasized that in the document, The Joy of Love, that the church doctrine cannot be the final word in answering tricky moral questions on divorce and other realities of contemporary life, and that the church must show mercy and kindness. He wants to make the church a soft place to fall, said Judy Alley, Omaha Catholic, a place people can go and get ministered to. The document, 2 years in the making and the product of unprecedented canvassing of ordinary Catholics and senior churchmen, is a plea from Francis's heart for the church to stop badgering Catholics about how to live their lives and instead find the redeeming value in their imperfect relationships. I understand those who prefer a more rigorous pastoral care, which leaves no room for confusion, he wrote in a document released Friday. But I sincerely believe that Jesus wants a church attentive to the goodness with which the Holy Spirit sows in the midst of human weakness. One of the most controversial issues facing the U.S. Church today is the treatment of divorced and remarried Catholics. In the document, Francis didn't create a church-wide admission to communion for the divorced and civilly remarried Catholics, as some progressives had wanted. But in the document, he suggested that bishops and priests could do more on a case-by-case basis that could become a significant development in church practice. Allie has administered to divorced Catholics and said she was encouraged by that suggestion. She said some divorced Catholics leave the church because they feel they are looked down on. The document, she said, shows Francis wants to help those people who are hurting. The document is not a quick read. It's 256 pages long, and even bishops were still making their way through it Friday.
Sounds like the Senate.
Local Catholics can expect to hear more about it in the weeks and months ahead. Bishops will likely write about the document in diocesan newspapers. Priests will address it in the homilies, and it will certainly be fodder for discussion at parish gatherings. The Reverend Damian Zuckerlein of Omaha's St. Francis Cabrini Church said the Pope wants to meet people where they are, even if it's far from what's expressed in the church doctrine. If you followed all the laws of the church, you'd be a saint, Zuckerlein said. We are all called to the ideal, but we all fail. We all need God's mercy. Zuckerlein said the pastoral care Francis calls for, fundamentally missionary, is going out to where people are, is important, but may be challenging for priests, especially those with large congregations, where it's harder to know parishioners individually. Bishop James Conley of Lincoln Diocese has said in a written statement that the document is nuanced and that it does not change Catholic teaching. Instead, it relies on the wisdom and richness of the Catholic teaching as the key to its interpretation. Bishop Richard Pates of the Des Moines Diocese agreed. He's consistent with church teaching, but it's fresh and responsive to people's situations. Omaha Archbishop George Lucas was on a missionary trip to China, but in a written statement said that the Pope displays a keen understanding of family life. He invited Catholics to join him in taking time to read the document so that we might plan together for its practical applications in family life. Eileen Burke Sullivan, a theologian and vice provost for mission and ministry at Creighton University, said the Pope recognizes that not all families fit the ideal of perfection because divorce and other realities. How do you meet people where they are, she said? That is the key theme of his whole papacy. The document is carefully worded. Francis selectively cited his predecessors, making clear that he is working within their tradition, but omitting the sometimes harsh, definitive language that is contrary to his mercy over moral priorities. He cited himself repeatedly, making some of the most significant points in strategically placed footnotes rather than in the text itself. On the topic of gays and lesbians, the document offered nothing significant beyond existing church teaching that gays are not to be discriminated against and are to be welcomed into the church with respect and dignity. It repeated the church position that same sex unions can in no way be equivalent to marriage between a man and a woman. Jerry Furlong of Omaha, a member of the Catholic support group for LGBT people and their families, said he's not surprised by how the document addressed same-sex marriage. He said that while he is encouraged by the Pope's call for acceptance, the document shows that the Church has a long way to go before fully welcoming LGBT people. On thorny issues such as contraception, Francis stressed that couples, individuals conscious, educated in church teaching, and not just dogmatic rules imposed on them across the board from above, must guide their decisions in church pastoral practice. We have been called to form consciences, not replace them, he said. That's true.
Yeah. And from the Nation, an ex-SEAL who says he killed bin Laden is arrested on drunk driving.
Oh.
Robert O'Neill, the former Navy SEAL who says he fired the shots that killed Osama bin Laden, was arrested Friday for driving under the influence after police found him asleep in a car parked at a convenience store in his home in Butte. O'Neill denied that he was intoxicated, thanked police for their professionalism. The facts are that I took a prescribed sleep aid to help with long-standing severe insomnia, he said. While the timing was bad and I regret the decision, I'm innocent of the charge. And in Burkeville, Virginia, a 60-year-old man who spent more than 30 years behind bars for crimes authorities now say he didn't commit was released Friday. Wearing jeans and sunglasses, Keith Harward shook hands with prison guards as he walked out of Nottoway Correctional Center. Harward's release came a day after the Virginia Supreme Court agreed that DNA evidence proves he is innocent of the 1982 killing of Jesse Perrone and the rape of Perrone's wife. The prosecution's base relied heavily on the testimony of two experts who testified that Harward's teeth matched bite marks on the woman's leg. In Chicago, Dennis Hazard agreed to pay $3.5 million to a person the former House Speaker sexually abused when the victim was 18. Hazard was working as a high school teacher and wrestling coach. He gave accounts of 4 alleged sex abuse victims. The following is the first time that prosecutors have confirmed that Hazard paid hush money to conceal sex abuse of a 14-year-old. The filing recommends that a federal judge sentence Hazard to up to 6 months in prison. Hazard, who is 74, pleaded guilty to breaking banking laws when he sought to pay millions of dollars to someone whom he had abused. In Boston, court documents show a federal magistrate in Boston ordered Apple Incorporated to help the FBI retrieve data from a locked iPhone. The February 1st order from U.S. Magistrate Marianne Bowler was unsealed Friday. The company responded in court filings that it was unable to comply. And in Cape Canaveral, SpaceX resumed space deliveries for NASA on Friday, and in a double triumph, successfully landed its booster rocker on an ocean platform for the first time. The unmanned Falcon rocket soared into a clear afternoon sky, carrying a full load of supplies for the International Space Station. After sending the Dragon capsule on its way, the first stage booster peeled away. Instead of dropping into the ocean like leftover junk, the 15-story booster steered to an upright touchdown on the barge. The capsule is expected to reach the space station Sunday. I think that's all for that.
Thank you. And from Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. The girls ply this endless stretch of beach every morning weaving through flocks of tourists to sell snacks, the ocean breeze whipping the gossamer scarves of their traditional shalwar kameez. They rarely went into the water. In their conservative world of southern Bangladesh, it was said decent girls didn't swim. 3 years ago, one of the girls noticed a lifeguard gliding across the waves on a surfboard. It seemed to her that almost like magic. Shoma Akhtar, the youngest of six sisters, did not lack confidence. When the surfer Rashid Alam came ashore, she said, "I want to do that." "Meet me tomorrow morning," Alam responded. It was several weeks before Shoma worked up the courage. She knew her mother wouldn't approve of anything that took her away from working on the beach. Surfing offered a perfect rebellion. She began stealing an hour or two late in the morning to get in the water. Within days, others followed. For these 8 girls, ages 11 to 14, surfing has helped them reclaim a piece of their childhood. It is a sport that conjures up freedom, verve, and sunlit horizons, attributes not usually associated with the life of a young girl in Bangladesh, an overwhelmingly Muslim country of 160 million, with one of the world's highest rate of child marriage. Now the girl surfers are a daily sight in the rolling gray waters. Alam, 26, and a gaggle of girls atop battered boards slide across the surf, defying customs as old as the Bay of Bengal. "I was scared of the waves," said Shoma, a chatty 14-year-old wearing waterproof lipstick, her hair in a ponytail, but not anymore. The young surfers kept their new pastime secret for weeks before telling their families.
Wow.
In Cox's Bazar, the girls' parents want them to work, Alam said. "We have to convince them that they can have a future outside the house." Cox's Bazar, a shabby coastal town near the border with Myanmar, adulthood often begins early. Poor children are yanked from school to sell food and homemade trinkets so that their families can eat. This is how Alam found the 8 girls, hustling to earn $1 or 2 a day, the weight of their families on their slim shoulders, for futures preordained. "My life before was making jewelry at home, work, sleep, making jewelry, work, sleep," said Maisha, 14. Like many girls in Bangladesh, she only has one name. "When I started surfing, I began thinking about my dreams," she said. "Now I think that there are lots of things I want to do." The girls never have had the chance if an Australian hadn't left his surfboard behind when he passed through Cox's Bazar in 1990s. The boys who found it became Bangladesh's first super surfers, learning how to ride the gentle swells along with what tourist brochures describe as the world's longest uninterrupted beach. I didn't know that. Alarm grew up working on the beach. Olam grew up working on the beach too, hawking horseback rides and lounge chairs to tourists. He taught himself to surf on a borrowed board and helped start the Cox's Bazar Surf Club in '08. He got a job as a municipal lifeguard, and the club now boasts 55 members and a small collection of secondhand boards and equipment, most donated. He got a job as a municipal lifeguard and adopted the surfer chick, board shorts, carefree stubble, quicksilver cap pulled low. When he started teaching the girls, it was as if he had found his calling. One of the youngest, 11-year-old Janahara, was terrified and struggled for months to balance herself on the board as it zoomed across the water. When she finally stood up, Alam gave her a long ovation. "It's the best moment of my life," said Janahara, the oldest of 5. One recent evening at Janahara's house, a Bangla movie played on a tiny television as children sat watching at the edge of the bed. A surfboard from Alam stood in the corner, obscured the dim light of a lone bulb overhead. Janahara's father, Muhammad Gulab Asim, was struggling house painter who hadn't had steady work in months. Her mother often ordered Johanna and her 8-year-old brother to work on the beach until dark, dragging a barrel filled with water bottles, chips, and cigarettes. "I try to encourage my daughter," Hussein said, "but she's our oldest and we need her to support the family." None of the parents reacted well to hearing their daughters were surfing. Besides the danger, they were worried about the girls' reputations in profoundly male-dominated society. Neighbors gossiped. Some of the girls were harassed on the street. Few parents said young men came to their houses accusing the girls of behaving improperly. "Men assumed that we're coming to the beach to do bad stuff," said Vanessa Rude, Alam's California-born wife, who first came to Cox's Bazar 4 years ago to volunteer for a charity. No one is used to seeing confident girls like this. The parents of two sisters, 13-year-old Rifa and 11-year-old Aisha, registered their displeasure with open palms, leaving Aisha with a bruise under one eye. The girls had grown so afraid of their father that when they saw him in town, they usually frying paranthas or flatbread at a scruffy roadside canteen, they would duck into a shop or dive in the back of a rickshaw. But in the water, they were fearless. One night, Rifa lunged into the ocean to chase a soccer ball after a boy challenged her. Alam, aware that any mishap involving girls could end his surfing project, was mortified. I know you're a good swimmer, he told her afterwards, but you can't do that. Several times, Shama's mother came down to the beach to drag her daughter back to work.
Oh my gosh.
What a life. Two lived by themselves in a one-room house made of sand on a steep hillside from a mile from the beach. Shoma's father had gone to live with his second wife. Her sisters had all been married as teenagers. Her mother woke before dawn to boil eggs over a small fire. Soon after sunrise, it was time for Shoma to head down to the beach to sell the eggs, their only source of income. At one point last year, Shoma disappeared from the beach for a week. Fellow surfer Sumi learned she had been sent to work as a housekeeper for a nearby family and marched there to confront Shoma's boss. I'm looking for my friend, said Sumi, 13. I'm going to take her home. The woman shooed Sumi away with a volley of curses. Alam paid house calls to win the trust of each parent. He persuaded Shoma's mother that her daughter shouldn't work as a maid because she was becoming a talented surfer. After a few months later, Shoma placed third in a local competition and won $40, the equivalent of 2 months' salary as a housekeeper. To celebrate, she and her mother rode a bus to a nearby city of Chittagong for a day, the first family trip she could remember. Kathu was warm to her daughter's hobby. One evening in her home, she laughed when she asked whether she wanted Shoma to be married soon like her sisters. She'll get married when she wants, Kathu replied. She's going to be surfing in Hawaii one day.
Oh,
Interesting
nice.
that they have to work to support their children, their families.
Oh,
Our
unbelievable.
kids don't even have any clue in this world.
And Sister Mom lived 2 full lives with vocations as a mother and a nun. From the Michael Kelly column, her family called her Sister Mom. Dorothy Leondecker raised 8 children in Ohio and then at 55 began a second vocation in Omaha, the prayer-filled life of a cloistered nun. That was her destiny and her calling, said her daughter Anita. She told us she couldn't have done it if we had called all the time and begged her to come home or made her feel like this wasn't what she was supposed to do with her life. But after nearly 25 years as Sister Clarissa, a Poor Clare nun, illness caused her time to grow short. She received permission to visit her children in Cincinnati for a week in February, but on the 7th day was taken to an emergency room and no longer could travel. After 5 weeks, on March 26th, Holy Saturday, she died of heart failure at the home of her youngest, Mary Noble. The family's joy in caring for their mother in her final weeks filled their hearts. There was not enough words to even describe it. Sister Clarissa's death at 80, though, caused sadness in both of her families. Her 8 children plus 17 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, as well as her 8 fellow nuns at the Franciscan Monastery of St. Clare. Sister Teresa Santiago, abbess of the Omaha Monastery, flew to Cincinnati for the funeral. She had provided a Poor Clare habit in which Sister Clarissa was buried. At the funeral mass, Daughter Mary said, a priest noted that some people always wanted to fill their life with stuff and how much money they make. But we really have to fill our lives with God, which is what Mom did. Oh, let's see here just a minute. There's a little more here. The life of Dorothy's sister Clarissa began in tragedy. The childbirth death of her mother from toxemia, which caused a rise in blood pressure. Because the child's father was away, nuns raised Dorothy in an orphanage. She taught herself to play the piano. As a young woman, her love of music led her to the office of a local symphony. She married in 58 and had the 6 boys and 2 girls. She worked as a nurse's aide. When she graduated from college, The mother said she wanted to be a Poor Clare convent, but then she got married. Before leaving, Dorothy recited a poem that she had written. You cannot go where I'm going, but I will always be with you. She landed in Omaha on July 16, 1991, welcomed by two nuns. 5 years later, she took her final vows, again in the presence of her children. As she told me at that time, this is a very blessed and joyful time in my life. It's a miracle I'm here. I've had two vocations. I think that is so neat that she had both. Isn't that
That's not something that really
I know,
is.
that's beautiful. I think that gave her a good experience.
So, Alexander Payne will shoot his next movie in Omaha a few days next week, and the World Herald has learned of a few details and locations, including a school, a pizza place, and a few blocks in Midtown. The biggest detail, of course, downsizing star Matt Damon will be in Omaha for the shoot. It's unknown if any of the film's other stars, including Kristen Wiig, Neil Patrick Harris, Jason Sudeikis, and Christoph Waltz, will be here. For his new film, Payne is going back to his old school, Creighton Prep, and he's bringing Damon with him. This week, Creighton Prep parents received an email that the entire prep campus will close at 3:15 p.m. Wednesday and will remain closed the rest of the day and evening. All vehicles need to be out of the parking lot by that time or they will be towed. Jeremy Caniglia, an art teacher at Creighton Prep, confirmed that the event is the downsizing shoot and that Matt Damon will be on location. I'm really excited for their visit. Caniglia said in an email, it has been a fun year for filmmaking in the Omaha area. Payne has spoken before to students in one of Caniglia's classes. Caniglia did not know more details about the shoot. Those handling local publicity for downsizing could not be reached for comment. The Omaha World Herald also learned of a couple of other spots where downsizing will be filming next week. The film will shoot around La Casa Pizzeria, said Victor Hahn, assistant manager at the restaurant at 4432 Leavenworth. I can tell you there will be no stars, he said. It's simply exterior shots. The film will also be shooting around Douglas Street between 46th and 48th Streets. This week, residents in the neighborhood received courtesy notes from the production saying crews will be on the site preparing to film throughout next week. The shoot there is slated to take place between 5 p.m. to midnight Monday and 5 p.m. Thursday to 5 a.m. Friday. The notice said the production will include large equipment and trucks. We want to make efforts to let you in and out of your apartments, the letter reads. You may be delayed passing between takes. Lydia Gordana, an assistant location manager who was listed on as a contact on the notice, said she could not reveal any additional details about the shoot. Representatives of the Omaha Police Department's traffic unit said it was not aware of any traffic enforcement requests for the area. Downsizing is an Omaha and Oscar winner Payne's follow-up to Nebraska, and his first film to shoot in Omaha since About Schmidt. It has also been his first film to use visual effects. The sci-fi tinged downsizing follows humanity's efforts to shrink itself as a solution to overpopulation and climate control. After the shrinkage, a process performed by Norwegian scientists, a 6-foot-tall man becomes 5 inches tall. The film is set about 15 years into the shrinking process and focus on an Omaha man, Damon, who decides to make the transition. Payne co-wrote the script with Jim Taylor. The film will shoot in 3 countries, the U.S., Canada, and Norway. The bulk of the 4th-month shoot will take place in Toronto, but Payne said he will shoot in L.A. and Omaha in April for a week apiece. That's interesting.
Yeah. In Madison, Nebraska, a 4-year-old who died showed signs of abuse, a detective said. A preliminary hearing in Madison County brought to light new details about the alleged abuse of 4-year-old Kaylee before her death in March. The Norfolk child's mother, Carla Montoya, 21, has been charged with felony child abuse resulting in death. Kaylee was pronounced dead at Children's Hospital on March 20th. The week before, the girl was unresponsive when her mother took her to the hospital in Norfolk. Josh Bauermeister, a detective with the police division, testified Thursday at a hearing that the mother had thrown her daughter onto the bed 3 times the day before, and that Kaylee's head had hit the headboard or the wall the last time. Montoya said Kaylee slept most of the rest of the day, which was uncharacteristic, but then woke up vomiting and could not stand on her own. Detectives said the mother told him that she and her boyfriend took the daughter to the hospital and different stores before returning home. They took her to the hospital 3 hours later. The girl was transferred by medical helicopter to Children's Hospital. Kaylee, there the doctor said Kaylee not only had suffered blunt force trauma to her head, but had a pattern of bruises consistent with being hit with all sorts of objects and consistent with child abuse. The attorney cross-examined the mother and asked the detective whether the mother had admitted to trying to throw Kaylee against the bed. The mother had never mentioned it, he said. County Attorney Joe Smith closed by telling the court the intent of the crime was clear. The mother never indicated she intended to throw Kaylee against a wall. Judge Michael Long ruled that there was enough evidence to show that a crime had been committed and to suspect the mother. He ordered the case to district court. Bail was set at $500,000.
And I'll read a short article and then a longer one. It says Alaskan adventure nears completion as sculptures settle in. 6 elephants aren't the only new thing at the Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium. The zoo's Alaskan adventure project moved a step closer to completion Friday morning with the installation of killer whale sculptures. It looks like they're breaching, as if they're porpoising. They're pushing the water out in front of them, said Zoo CEO Dennis Pate of the whales. The exhibit, which is expected to open in June, will act as a splash ground play area and a water feature for the zoo. It will be free with zoo admission and will include more than 75 bronze sculptures, many of which will have built-in water features that mimic the actions of the animals in the wild. Several bronze sea lion sculptures were put in place last month. The exhibit also features puffins, a bear, salmon, a humpback whale centerpiece. Each of the sculptures was created by Matthew Plachik, who has made several other pieces for the zoo. His work can also be seen at Children's Hospital and Medical Center, Omaha's Riverfront, and the CenturyLink Center. And the photos have a beautiful humpback whale, it looks like, sculpture. It looks really, really cool. And then some bronze seals on the paper. And then back to that article about Henningsen, Richardson, and Durham. It says that where will HDR go? HDR announced its first choice for a new global headquarters nearly a year ago. Its leaders touted downtown skyline visibility, access to the airport's vibrant core. The city's vibrant core. Now that it has pulled the plug on the 11th and Dodge Street site, the question becomes, will the architecture and engineering giant try to find an alternative site with similar allure, or might look farther west? HDR leaders won't give a hint on its options, other than to say they're not abandoning the pledge to build in Omaha. Their earlier plan called for a June construction start, and they face expiration on their current campus lease in January 2019. Real estate and planning experts concur that HDR's change of heart could deal a definite blow to downtown, but they say that nearby sites could still offer the urban flavor and contribute to the effort to revitalize older parts of the city. If it winds up around downtown, but not specifically on that site, it still could support central city development, said Marty Schukert, the former city planning director, even if the site is in Midtown. One potential Midtown site is Exarban Village near 67th and Center Streets. Nodal Company, the lead developer of Exarban, for a year has been marketing a tract that has room for 350,000 square feet of office and retail space, 1,500 parking stalls, and 100 apartments. In fact, a schematic architectural design already has been drawn up by HDR.
Now that's a real big realty company.
Yeah, that Nodal. Yeah. Asked about HDR, Jay Nodal of Nodal Company said, "We certainly hope that Exarban Village will be a possibility for HDR. Another Midtown site HDR previously looked at was a stretch being cleared by Mutual of Omaha east of Midtown Crossing. The site is ideal, mutual officials have said, for a mixed-use development that includes a corporate headquarters. We're hearing exactly what you're hearing, said Molly Skold, Marketing and Communications Director for Midtown Crossing. We're not in direct conversations right at this second with HDR, but we would certainly welcome the opportunity to talk to HDR. Councilman Chris Jerome, whose district includes Midtown and Exarban areas, said he's making the pitch to bring HDR to his district. I'm sure every developer in town is trying to make friends with HDR, he said.
Oh my gosh, that'd be a huge building, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
And a review could reshape students' testing. Statewide academic testing of public school kids in Nebraska could see some changes in the next few years. Officials embark on a review of the battery tests. Eighth graders may no longer have to take the online writing test. High school students may see their state tests replaced by the ACT or SAT college entrance exams. Nebraska Commissioner described some potential scenarios for the members of the Nebraska State Board of Education. The 8th and 11th grade writing tests that are taken online have experienced computer problems for several years. There might be a recommended suspending of the online tests next year. The 4th grade writing test, which students take with paper and pencil, could remain to fulfill a state requirement that students be tested 1 year in writing. The state's new English language arts assessment, based on recently adopted Nebraska standards, contains some writing elements. Meanwhile, a bill directing the Nebraska Education to replace the 11th grade state tests with a standard college admission test is on the verge of approval. Federal law requires that states test kids in grades 3 through 8 and once in high school in math and reading. However, states can authorize using a different high school test. Bloomstead said the board won't be asked to vote until June. The board is expected to vote next fall. Bloomstead said the state's annual math, science, and language arts testing is about halfway done. He said officials are trying to meet state and federal law while charting a new vision. And an 18-year-old Boys Town resident's death in February was due to natural causes, said the sheriff. Larry McBride died of cardiac dysrhythmia associated with cardiac fibrosis. It is a condition that affects the heart valves and muscles. McBride's body was found on the floor of his private room by Boys Town house parents on February 22nd. He was a private placement student from North Carolina. McBride was last seen before bed at about 10 p.m. February 21st. A preliminary investigation did not find any signs of injury, struggle, or disruption in the room.
And from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a second troubled government-run hospital on a Native American reservation in South Dakota was given an extension Friday to reach an agreement with federal officials to make significant quality of care improvements in order to avoid losing Medicare and Medicaid funds. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services notified the administration of the hospital on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation about the extension of a little more than a month after the hospital on the Rosebud Indian Reservation received the same extension. The latest notification comes days after the top officials at the Indian Health Service, which administers the hospitals, met with tribal leaders and pledged to improve the services provided at the facilities. Both hospitals have an April 29th deadline to reach an agreement to enter what constitutes a last chance remediation program. If not, the facilities won't be allowed to bill the government for services provided to Medicare and Medicaid eligible patients after May 16th. The purpose of the agreement for the Pine Ridge Hospital would be to effectively safeguard patient health and safety and effectively address underlying systematic problems that have kept the hospital from achieving or sustaining compliance with regulations, according to a letter from CMS addressed to IHS's top leader, Mary Smith, and Sophia Conroy, the hospital's acting administrator. The funding cutoff warning for the 45-bed Pine Ridge Hospital comes after federal inspectors found serious deficiencies during an announced visit in October, including records from 3 of 6 sampled medical staffers who lacked appropriate permission to practice at that hospital, unlocked cupboards with syringes, needles, and other equipment, and unsecured drugs and medical records. The CMS letter also noted that the February 25th inspection found other deficiencies. Details won't be publicly available until later this month, but the latter showed the hospital was cited for violating policies regarding medical screenings during emergency cases and anti-dumping regulations to ensure that individuals with emergency medical conditions were not denied essential life-saving services. IHS, which provides free health care to enrolled members of Native American tribes, said it will work with CMS as expeditiously as possible to reach the agreement, it said in a statement Friday. IHS has been severely underfunded and had its facilities bill Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance for care given to patients who have that coverage. Statistics from 2005 government studies show that reimbursements constituted between 7 and 58% of some of the hospital's direct medical care budgets, the average being only 39%. At a public forum this weekend, Sioux Falls Smith told the tribal leaders and senior level IHS officials that the agency intends to meet the April 29th deadline given to the hospital in Rosebud, which is about 95 miles east of Pine Ridge.
And you haven't read this one. A film lover set an example living with respect and kindness. Jared Zoll faced many of the obstacles that those with high-functioning autism do, but his family said he accomplished everything doctors said he couldn't, and then some. Zoll, 24, was a student at Metro Community College. He dreamed of going to film school to make the movies he loved so much. He had hundreds of Blu-ray discs to prove it. Zoll died Thursday when he stepped off of a bus north of 72nd and Cass Street. He was struck by a tow truck while crossing the street. He was taken to the hospital and died later. His mother said her son was honest, considerate of everyone, had a positive outlook. He didn't let his autism define him because I raised him to know that he could do everything anyone else could. He was a role model within his family, respectful to everyone, even the dogs. If he accidentally stepped on a paw, he was quick with a "pardon me" to the poor little dog. Zoll's cousin, Melanie Schnell, babysat him as a child, and the two remained close. She said Zoll gave her hope for her own son. I also have a young son with autism who reminds me a lot of how Jared was at that age. Schnell remembered the family playing an Easter game, a jelly bean-based competition in which players draw the candies and hope to get a safe chance. Zoll's mother believes that on the day he was killed, having picked up his paycheck from his job at Baker's Supermarket, he was going to Target to buy another movie. He had so many in his collection he could have opened a store. He was taking courses at Metro with plans of moving to a film school. He took the bus or walked everywhere he went. He wanted to drive and got a perfect score on the written part of his driver's test, but actual driving was hard for him. His honesty and passion taught the family how to navigate. Such a terrible thing to lose such a bright light, she said.
Thank you, Jean. And we'll start with the deaths and funerals from the Omaha paper. Anderson, Jim D. Anderson, age 76. A graveside service will be Saturday, April 9th at 11 a.m. at the Calvary Cemetery with full military honors. Arrangements by Heafy, Hoffman, DeWart, Cutler. Barrett, Mima Barrett, age 96. A memorial service will be 11 a.m. April 23rd at the Arboretum at 8141 Farnham Drive. Memorial contributions to the Fontenelle Forest. Blackstone, Thomas E. Tom Blackstone, 69. Memorials to the charity of your choice. A memorial service will be announced at a later date. Arrangements by the Kramer Funeral Home. Bowick, Norma M. Bonnie Bowick, age 91. Memorials to St. Mary's Catholic Church Endowment Fund. Arrangements by the Bellevue Memorial Chapel of Heafy, Hoffman, DeVore, Cutler, and the funeral service will be 10:30 a.m. Monday, April 11th at St. Mary's Catholic Church. Chapman, Arlene G. Pierce Peterson Chapman, age 75, formerly of Omaha, but passed away in Los Angeles. A memorial mass will be celebrated at 1 p.m. April 11th at Sacred Heart Church at 22nd and Binney Streets in Omaha. Dyer, Ronald L. Dyer, age 63. Memorials to the family for future designation in Ronald's name. Services 11 a.m. Saturday at Forest Lawn Funeral Home. Arrangements by Forest Lawn Funeral Home and Cemetery. Evans, Lorraine C. Evans, age 89. Memorials requested to St. Thomas the More School Endowment Fund. Funeral Mass Monday, 10:30 a.m. St. Thomas More Catholic Church. Arrangements by the Bethany Funeral Home. Hall, Janet A. Hall, age 72. Mass of Christian Burial Saturday, April 9th at 10 a.m. at St. Matthew the Evangelist Church. Arrangements by the Bellevue Memorial Chapel of Heaphy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler. Hayes, Michael T. Hayes, age 64. Memorials may be made to the Flamingos for Hope in care of Methodist Hospital Foundation. Services will be held April 9th at 1 p.m. at Rejoice Lutheran Church. Arrangements by Caller Dulce Mortuary and Papillion. Jackson, Eartha M. Jackson, age 69, and that's the only information we have. Livingston, Barbara J. Livingston, age 72. A memorial service will be 1 p.m. Tuesday, April 12th at the Rhoda Mortuary, Ames Street Chapel. Arrangements provided by the Rhoda Mortuary. Mazur, Joseph C. Mazur, age 91. Graveside service will be Tuesday at 1 p.m. at the West Lawn Hillcrest Memorial Park Funeral Home, and that's who's handling it, the arrangements. Meadows, Bethany Ann Haman Meadows, age 91 of Council Bluffs. Funeral service Monday, 11 a.m. at the funeral home. The family will direct memorials. Arrangements by the Cutler O'Neill Meyer Woodring Bayless Chapel Funeral Home. Nan Fido, Mildred T. Van Fido, age 99. A memorial service 10 a.m. Monday, April 11th at St. Pius the Church, 10th Catholic Church. Arrangements by John A. Gentleman Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel. Niles, Jerry F. Niles of Omaha, age 63. Memorials will be directed to the American Diabetes Foundation. Memorial service Monday, April 11th at 2:30 p.m. at the Brahman Mortuary. Arrangements by the Brahman Mortuary Southwest Chapel. Nixon, Gladys M. Nixon, age 78. Memorials requested to the College of St. Mary Nursing Program and the American Cancer Society. Funeral service Monday, 10 a.m. at the church, which would be the Harrison Street Baptist Church. Arrangements by Bethany Funeral Home. Schlitz, Lawrence M. Schlitz, age 76. A complete notice later. Arrangements by Heaphy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler. Stark, Manelli, Angela Vitali Stark Manelli, age 91. A memorial service will be held on April 9th at 10 a.m. at the 72nd Street Chapel of John A. Gentleman Mortuaries and Crematory. Memorials to the Vincent Manelli Scholarship at Creighton Prep. Arrangements by John A. Gentleman Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel. Stressman, Gerald J. Stressman, Monsignor, age 83. In lieu of flowers, the family requests memorials be made to the charity of one's choice or the Holy Trinity Parish, Des Moines. A funeral mass will be celebrated at Holy Trinity Church in Des Moines, Monday, April 11th at 11 a.m. And there's no arrangements here. Sullivan, Darlene Ann Sullivan, age 77. Memorials to the Catholic Daughters Scholarship Fund. Mass of Christian Burial Monday, 10 a.m. at Christ the King Catholic Church. Arrangements by Heaphy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler, F Street Chapel. And finally, Valentino, Ricky Ann Fictum Valentino, age 64 of Lincoln. And I'm sorry, that's not our last one. Services will be Monday, April 11th in York, Nebraska at 10 a.m. at the First United Methodist Church. In lieu of flowers, the family will request memorials to the Susan B. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation or the York Adopt-A-Pet. Arrangements by Heaphy Hoffman Dvorak Cutler. And finally, Wade, Clarence Barclay Bark-Wade, age 89. A complete notice will be later. Arrangements by Heafy Hoffman, Dvorak Cutler, West Center Chapel.
And from Lincoln, Adams. Laura Adams of Fall City, age 94. Anderson, S.E.N. Lisa Jane Anderson of Lincoln, age 52. And memorial services 11 a.m. Friday at Faith Bible Church in Lincoln. Memorials to the family to be used toward a family mission trip.
Oh,
Buthers Mason and Love Funeral Home. Bauer, B-A-U-E-R, Larry Melvin Bauer of Plattsmouth, age 76. Birch, Patricia Ann Birch, aged 86 of Lincoln. The family will greet friends from 6 to 7:30 Friday at Roper and Sons Mortuary. Memorials to the Horace Son Hospice in Lincoln and Roper and Sons Funeral Home in charge. Black, Eleanor Juanita Mae Black, aged 84, and service will be private, no visitation. Donations are asked to be sent to the Lincoln Children's Zoo. Braun, Thomas A. Braun, 69 of Lincoln. Visitation 2 to 6:30 p.m. Friday. And Roper and Sons Mortuary, Rosary at 6:30 p.m. Friday. This will be at Roper and Sons Mortuary. Mass of Christian Burial, 11 a.m. Saturday, April 9th. North American Martyrs Catholic Church. Memorials to Mass offerings. Duff, Norman L. Duff, 75 of Lincoln. Graveside service Monday, 2 p.m. and in Roca, Nebraska. Macer and Love Funeral Home. Memorials to wounded warriors or Mass offering. Herrick, Irma Herrick, 92 of Lincoln. Funeral service, 11 a.m. Saturday, April 9th, Southminster United Methodist Church. Memorials to Lincoln Indian Center and Metcalf Funeral Home. Hoagland, Barbara Jean Hoagland, 68. Celebration of Life, 2 p.m. Saturday, April 9th at Sutton Memorial Chapel in Sutton. Memorials to the family. Howard, Mary Howard of Barada, Nebraska, age 90. Johnson, Sylvia M. Johnson, 96 of Fairmont. Funeral service, 10:30 a.m. Monday. Farmer and Son Funeral Home. Memorials to Fairview Manor in Fairmont. Copsa, Frank Copsa, 80 of Surprise, Nebraska. Memorial Mass, 10 a.m. Saturday at April 9th at Immaculate Conception Church in Ulysses. Shermock Funeral Home in David City. Laufer, Janice Maxine Laufer, age 77. She was called the Owl Lady. At her request, casual services will be at 1 p.m. Saturday, April 16th at the Crete Eagles Club. And memorials to the family. Leak, Pamela Leak, 69 of Lincoln, private family service. Memorials to the Cat House. Higby McQuiston Mortuary. Lee, Fern L. Lee, 89. Let's see here. Graveside service, 10 a.m. Saturday. No visitation. McClatchy, Gail McClatchy, 87, a veteran of World War II. Funeral 11 a.m. Saturday, April 9th at United Methodist Church at Beaver Crossing and Lober Moore Funeral Home. Mosteller, Eleanor Elizabeth Mosteller of Sabetha, Kansas, age 93. Rasky, Hazel Marie Rasky, 95 of Lincoln. She was Rosie the Riveter at the Glen L. Martin Bomber Plant in Omaha.
really?
Yeah. Memorial service, 2 p.m. Monday, United Lutheran Church, Lincoln. Memorials to the United Lutheran Church, Aspen Funeral Home. Reed, Julius Harold Reed, 87. Let's see. Memorials to American Diabetes Foundation. Celebration of Life, 2 p.m. April 9th at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home in Lincoln. Schmucker, Madeline Mimi Schmucker, age 100. Funeral 10:30 a.m. Saturday, April 4th, Methodist Church in Brock. Hermington Funeral Home. Memorials to the Brock Methodist Church. Chandru. Joe Chandru, 80 of Milford, was a World War II military graveside service, 11 a.m. Tuesday, April 12th, Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Bluebermore Funeral Home. Smith. Derek Dwayne Smith of Boston, age 39. Service, Grace United Methodist Church in Hastings, April 9th at 2 p.m. And last, Terry, Linda Lee Terry, 68 of Lincoln. Service, graveside, 11 a.m. Monday, 4/11, Lincoln Memorial Park. Roper Sons Mortuary.
Thank you, Jean. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska 68152. And we thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. And now that brings us up to our break, and Jean and I will be back with opinions, living, business, and sports.
Oh, so your tests were all okay.
Well, here's the no brain tumor.
No, yeah.
But this is the note that I get back from after spending all that time from the nurse at the optometrist neurologist office. Everything looks stable compared to 2012 to this. Then why are my eyes doing this? And I don't see her till May 11th. And I'm sick to my stomach all the time. I got these finally, which are better.
Do they work?
I get headaches now because my glasses are
Yeah.
hurt.
They cause a lot of headaches, new glasses.
Well, these are the old ones.
Oh, those are your old ones?
I can't wear the new ones.
Oh.
I can't see out of the new ones, and I lost all that money. Now I get to keep the frame, sure, but your eyeglasses are the part that I think. So that's that.
What do you take for the headaches?
Tylenol. So she gave me meclizine for no, she gave me Zofran, which didn't work. I asked her for Compazine, but she didn't give it to me. She said it causes some kind of muscle tics in the head and the neck. So she wanted to give me meclizine. I haven't started it because, I like Monday mornings. I wake up and I throw up every Monday morning. It's the weirdest thing, and it's not. It's just, but I'm sick all during the week. No,
I know. I'm just teasing.
No, I think it's just too,
I think
much.
it's stress.
But I think, my eyes are looking at different.
Oh,
ways.
that causes nausea.
Yeah, so that's what it is.
Yes, it is. I think it's your stress.
But why are they doing that? I still don't have an answer, Jean. Why is that? And what
the-
are they going to do about it?
And the eye doctor doesn't know either.
The eye doctor is the one who sent me to the eye optometrist, but it was a nurse I was talking to. So I don't see her again.
But you're seeing an ophthalmologist?
An ophthalmologist, neurologist who specializes in
that.
And then surgeries of muscles, but I'm just not so sure I want to have surgery with my eyes again. She says my eyes, like prisms, I need a prism here and a prism here and a prism here, and they don't make glasses like that. So I don't know what to do.
That is weird.
It is weird. And they were fine before. These are the old glasses. All I went for was to get them sharper. Like to look.
Oh, I know what you mean. Like I do.
Clear.
I have cataracts and it doesn't help any.
Yeah, clear. And then all of a sudden I had this problem. I just don't know if I trust anybody anymore. I really don't with my eyes.
Well, a neurologist would have to know something. I mean, they would know the most.
But she didn't. She just said it looks stable. Well, what does that mean? What's causing this suddenly? Is it that they gave me the wrong prescriptions? Or that my eyes really are changing every month? Or what is it? My eyes hurt so bad, and all I want to do is lay down.
Do you have sharp aching in them?
It aches so bad. So you spend all that money to go to these doctors, and you still don't have an answer. Those tests are going to cost me $1,000. I think she's going back.
Already?
You go have coffee. Did you get coffee?
I did.
Do you want a soda?
Yeah,
They're
maybe
not
I'll drink
cold.
one.
They're
Yeah, that's
warm,
okay.
honey.
Maybe I'm drinking all the caffeine I can.
I'm
Thank you.
with you. So you have just been such a blessing to me, Jane. I wish you'd let Uh-oh. Thank you. And we'll start with the public pulse from La Vista. No more traffic lights, please. The proposal to add stoplights along Highway 370 sends my blood pressure through the roof. Looking to slow the flow of a busy road, March 31st, World Herald. Highway 370 is the only major route from Gretna to the Missouri River. Stopping every 6 blocks greatly impedes the flow of traffic. As it is now, you can't even achieve the posted speed limit. This is a result of poor planning and very poor traffic engineering. Instead of more lights, how about frontage roads, overpasses, or routing of traffic into major intersections? Plus, traffic lights have been shown to improve safety, or have never been shown to improve safety. If people are really serious about safety and helping the environment, they should try something other than more traffic lights. Signed, John Kavanaugh.
And Sass is on the right track. U.S. Senator Ben Sass of Nebraska is a breath of fresh air in Congress. His first speech in the Senate was the finest declaration of statesmanship from a member of Congress that I have heard. His concerns are for our country above political party. I did not vote for him, but if he continues in the direction he's going, he will have my vote every time he is on the ballot. Gordon Scott of Omaha.
What people think was going to happen with this mess of a political system we have in Washington. With all of their infighting and backstabbing, the 500-plus lawmakers in Congress couldn't decide what sort of pizza to order, let alone run a nation as great as ours. Truthfully, I'm glad someone like Donald Trump has come forward to buck the trend. Is he perfect? No. But at least he's shaking up the status quo, something that should have been done long ago. Unless you've been in a cave the last 20 years, you should have noticed the middle class. The bread and butter of our nation is all but gone. Just who do the liberals think who supports all the handouts that go to the folks with their hands out? Government has gotten too big to be functional, made up of a gang of self-serving career politicians. It's time to clean house. Signed, Brad Kramer of Omaha.
No comment. Republicans have a mandate. The left loves to trot out the results of the 2012 presidential election when it is bashing Republicans and conservatives who are pushing back on President Obama's policies. They like to remind us that the people spoke and elected Barack Obama as president twice. What they conveniently ignore is that in that same election, when Obama was granted a second term, the American people also gave us a Republican majority in the House for the second time. They also ignore the results of the 2014 election that retained the Republican majority in the House for the third consecutive time. With the 2014 election being the more recent measure of the will of the American people, you can make a case that the House and Senate were given Republican majorities to push back on Obama. There are those of us who believe that the Republicans are doing their jobs by stopping Obama from making things worse. So stop pretending that Obama's reelection was a mandate to let him do whatever he wants. Gary Fitch of Omaha.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's absolute rejection of anything that comes from President Obama is not driven by partisanship or ideology. From the day that President Obama took office, McConnell swore to take and make it his duty to make Obama's presidency fail. His attitude is irrational. The last controversy over the nomination of Supreme Court judge demonstrates this. President Obama is a constitutional directive to nominate a new judge. The Senate has an obligation to advise and consent. McConnell's stubborn refusal to do his sworn duty to uphold the Constitution is an abuse of power. Signed, Barbara Chambers of Shenandoah, Iowa.
And honoring unsung heroes. You probably won't recognize these heroes on the street. They don't carry a badge or carry a gun. They don't drive a fire truck, ambulance, or patrol car. They work around the clock, holidays and birthdays, missing family functions and school activities. They are the 911 operators and dispatchers, the lifeline between someone who needs help and those who respond. These operators and dispatchers are the unseen and unsung heroes of emergency services. They are the heroes with headsets. The second full week of April is dedicated to the men and women who serve as public safety telecommunicators. In 2016, National Public Safety Telecommuters Week runs April 10th to the 16th. I want to publicly thank all of these people for their hard work and dedication. Keep up the good work. I certainly appreciate that you are there should I ever need you. Jean Johnson of Ralston.
Yeah, and more commentary from Tom Purcell, who is a wonderful writer, said it was just a TV show, but we could use one like it now. Boy, did I love watching that show when I was a boy. I speak of the Waltons, of course. I've been thinking about the show since Earl Hamner, its creator, died not long ago at the age of 92. Hamner based the Waltons on his book Spencer Mountain, which recounted fond memories of his childhood in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia during the Great Depression and World War II. When I was 11 years old, it was a central part of my weekly ritual. Every Thursday after dinner, my father and I boarded our 1972 Plymouth Fury 3 station wagon and headed to the Dell Farm grocery store in a small suburban plaza a mile away. I pushed the cart as I helped my father work through the long list my mother provided. Though cookies and potato chips were never on my mother's list, on a good night my father would be feeling generous. He'd buy a box of Dell Farm's fresh-baked oatmeal and chocolate chip cookies and a bag of Snyder of Berlin potato chips, onion dip, and a wooden case of Regent soda pop. When we finally pulled the loaded-down station wagon into the garage, everyone in the house was alerted and the massive unloading process began. We usually got everything packed away by 8 p.m., just in time to head to the family room to watch the Waltons. I'd bring in a bowl of ice to the family room, then open some bottles of pop. Then I'd open the Snyder of Berlin chips and pour them into a couple of bowls. Soon I'd be sitting there with my sisters and parents, sipping soda pop and eating the finest chips ever made and enjoying the newest episode of one of our favorite TV shows. I don't know when, I don't know I'm sorry. I didn't know then why I loved the show so much, but I know now. I loved it because it mirrored the simple family experience my sisters and I were living. There was lots of imperfections in my family, to be sure. There would always be conflicts and dramas when 6 children and their mother and father are living in a modest-sized home. But like the Waltons, our mom and dad were committed to each other and to us. They put our needs ahead of their own. They gave us an incredible sense of security and well-being. They taught us right from wrong. We all went to Catholic school and attended Mass every Sunday, and they drove us to become good, productive citizens. Thanks to them, all my sisters and I are flourishing as adults. Interestingly, nobody expected the Waltons to succeed when it first aired on 1972.
Neat story.
The 1970s were a turbulent and cynical era after all. The Vietnam War was raging, the Watergate dominated the news. According to Pathos, the social changes of the 60s had paved the way to the disco hedonism of the 70s. So why was a wholesome drama about a rural America family such a hit? In 2012, Hamner told the New York Times there was a simple explanation, that there was a yearning to see people trying to make decent lives for themselves and their children. Well, there's a lot of uncertainty and nuttiness going on in the world today. Pickup culture, family breakdown, terrorism, social unrest, and incredible political division. But I believe that most people are still trying to make decent lives for themselves and their children. We could use another Earl Hamner and another hit TV show that validates the people and families that are struggling in silence to live right. And then there's an interesting thing about Omaha homicides I want to read. It said killers took 14 fewer lives in the first 3 months of 2016 than the same months last year. Local homicide numbers fluctuate, and 2 dead is still too many, but it's a start. All of Omaha wants to see violent crime decline after a record 50 people were killed last year. The best news is that just one of this year's early homicides appears to be related to a sort of gang and gun violence that has wrecked parts of our city. One key reason is, One key reason is that the work by the police of gathering better intelligence and proactively policing neighborhoods facing gang-related charges. Here's to hoping some of the city's would-be gang shooters come to their senses, and that others are behind bars serving mandatory sentences. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. A British teacher is out to inspire as he cycles the globe.
I think that's exciting.
Yeah, Will Hodson, a primary school teacher in London, was reading a superhero book to his students one day when a thought struck him. We were talking about how we can do something heroic every day. Open a door for someone, say something nice. I scrapped the day's lesson plans and asked the 5-year-olds to think about what are we all good at. Hodson, 39, was good at cycling. He ended up taking his lesson to an extreme. After saving up for 2 years, he quit his job, put on a red cape and blue tights, and embarked on a 5-year ride across 7 continents to raise money for charity.
Wow.
I bet they loved his costume. This included Parkinson's disease, which his father has. Calling himself the super cycling man, he tries to visit at least one school per country. He wants to spread the message that we can all be heroes. As well as this being a fairly selfish journey, he loves long distance cycling. I want to engage school children, at least teach them bits of geography, like that there are 7 continents. I ride into their assembly hall with my music blaring, playing the Superman theme song. Starting last May, he hit 14 countries in Europe before stopping in the Republic of Georgia. He is recovering from a stomach ache bug there and loading up on visas for countries such as Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Russia. At assemblies, Hodson asks children to share their dreams. The most common included being a soccer star, opening a restaurant, or being a fashion designer. I tell them that a lot of the best things you'll ever achieve don't come easy. On the road, strangers have acted heroically. Turkish gas station attendants sheltered him in the snow. People in Serbia had a giant pizza waiting when he crossed the border. He averages about 60 miles a day, travels with a small repair kit. He is up to about 19,000 of the 140,000 he hopes to raise for 5 charities: Parkinson's, UK, and the World Cancer Research Fund. Antarctica, the most expensive continent to visit, is last on his list after Asia, Australia, the Americas, and Africa.
Wow. And from the pulpit, the first one is from Reverend Susan Ellis, Omaha Northside Christian Church. Faith is claimed but rarely executed. Faith is trust without proof in the undergirding of our spiritual lives. We believers espouse that we have faith, but when the rubber hits the road, faith is hard to find. Recently, our church helped feed the homeless through a local group called Taking It to the Streets, where I witnessed powerful faith that ran rampant amongst those daily taking it to the streets. One after another joyfully shared how God had changed their lives and provided their every need in feeding those living on the streets. Whenever they needed something like a building, an oven, steam tables, and had no money, they prayed and God provided. For many, this sounds contrived, but their faith was deep and unmistakable. As an ordained minister, I'm expected to have strong faith, and I do. But in the presence of those disciples who have seen so much of life, I felt weak. I serve a 125-year-old church that historically has been in several locations and even rebuilt from fire, but is presently without a building to call its own. Like many churches, we shrank out of our building and had to sell the property when maintenance exceeded our offering. Our giving is meant more than a light bills and repairs, and so 35 of the 90-plus members of years ago, we stepped out in faith. Now asked if the church is growing, I excitedly say yes. We have grown exponentially in faith and community. God brought us this far and is leading us forward. We remain in constant prayer for a new location that is handicapped accessible and affordable, so our offering continues to be more for ministry to others than for meeting place. Like those disciples we met on Saturday, our faith is that God will provide. I remember Mother Teresa saying she did the same thing, that she always prayed and they had enough to feed all the people in India, and that God always provided.
Yeah, Spirit Eyes here's our prayer when there's for good.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did, for sure. Okay. And blossoms that will attract pollinators. Choosing the right plant material is a good start for a pollinator-friendly landscape. Since pollen is the main food source for pollinators such as bees, knowing the bloom time and making sure those flowering times overlap extend through the growing season is important. Early season bloomers flower from January into April. They are essential to pollinators in late winter and early spring. Pollinators, such as bees, emerge and begin searching for nectar and pollen as early as January. Diversity is important since bloom times can vary greatly year to year. A good choice for very early bloom is native or hybridized. It's called hazel. Its fragrance and showy color, in contrast to other plants in the winter landscape, lure the pollinators that emerge this time of year. Spring is early this year, so native Juneberry, which is called dogwood, redbud, cherry, and plum, may also be blossoming in time for the bees. Fruit trees in general are great for pollinators. A native March blooming perennial is pasque flower. It is a great source for early emerging bumblebees as an alternative to daffodils and tulips. Pasque flowers track the sun throughout the day while providing pollen and a warm place for bees to explore. Snowdrops, quill, and grape hyacinth and regular hyacinth are all perennial plants grown from bulbs and give bees and other native pollinators a fresh source of nectar. Snowdrops and squill will naturalize over time and create a nice carpet. Brunera, boy, these are a lot of plants I haven't heard of. Brunera, a non-native with delicate blue flowers, blooms for a long period beginning in April. It is an excellent shade plant with many different varieties. Lungwort begins blooming in April in shady or wooded places. Maintaining landscapes that have a diversity of flowering plants will encourage pollinators to return. And this is just a little bit on gardening with less water. Turn to low-tech irrigation. Lingering drought and restrictive water use rules don't mean you have to give up gardening. Instead, try some down-to-earth approaches such as planting in small areas, using containers, buying fast-growing plants, and installing efficient irrigation systems. Low-tech, low-cost irrigation is all about saving time in the garden and growing healthier plants. Bainbridge subscribes to the Water on Demand School of Gardening, or using simple things like terracotta pots and pipe buried in the ground to irrigate vegetables. Buried clay pots or pitcher irrigation is thought to have originated in China thousands of years ago. Filled with water, a buried, unglazed, porous pot of clay provides controlled irrigation by flow to the plants planted near it. Pores outside the pots dry. As the soil dries, the sticky water molecules quickly refill the empty pores, and the water inside is there for the plants to use. That's different. Getting water directly to crops minimizes weed growth also. Most vegetable crops require 1 inch of water or more per week during the growing season. This equals 3/4 of a gallon of water per plant. So plant small, grow only what's needed. I think I'll leave it there. It sounds like a lot of work.
That's interesting. It is
That's
interesting.
the clay pots.
There's not a lot, and this is from Reverend Ernest Medina, the St. Martha's Episcopal Church from the pulpit. There's not a lot of pizzazz in the post-resurrection accounts of Jesus. Not a lot of Hollywood, not a lot of flair. The encounters after the first Easter almost seem ordinary and normal, and it is in this that we can find the good news. What do we discover about Jesus? In this Sunday story, we see that Jesus meets the disciples in their workplace. We see that Jesus is not afraid to repeat what he teaches or how he teaches. He does not assume that once is enough. Jesus is willing to meet anyone right where they are, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Jesus seems to have the presence of meeting folks over a meal, a preference of meeting folks over a meal. Jesus does all this without any judgment except the judgment of unconditional love. I am amazed that after Peter denies his very relationship with Jesus The only way that Jesus will respond to the betrayal is by asking Peter, "Do you love me?" How equally amazing to discover that whatever we do wrong, whatever we do that blinds us from God's presence, is to be judged by four simple words, one simple question: do you love me? Not a lot of Hollywood or flair. It just seems normal. God loves and we are always welcome. God loves and we are always invited. Jesus will always offer, "Follow me." And, excuse me, from Heloise. Dear Heloise, my son has been deployed many times and misses many special occasions. I contacted my gift store and asked to see a selection of cards for Easter, Passover, Mother's Day, Father's Day. I purchased over 100 assorted cards and sent them over for the soldiers to send back home to their loved ones. It was a big hit. As special occasion cards are normally in stock but not displayed until appropriate seasons, they can be purchased. A little something to ease loneliness and separation is a great morale booster. Signed, a soldier's parent. And Heloise writes, "Dear parent, this is wonderful and I love the idea. Many overseas military locations have free mail for soldiers. They can send cards and letters home without postage." I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
What could be better? Hugs to you and your son. P.S. She writes, "Throw in some playing cards and board games for fun and hard candy. Individually wrapped is always welcome." Dear Heloise, can you help? My drain in my kitchen and baths can get smelly. What should I do? Signed, Heidi in California. Heloise writes, "Sure can. How about a homemade cleaning solution that is safe, non-toxic, easily accessible, and cheap? Pour 1/2 cup of baking soda into the drain. Then pour 1 cup of heated vinegar. The combination will bubble up and fizz. Let the mixture sit for 15 to 30 minutes, then turn on cold water and let it run for a good 30 seconds to a minute. Your drains will be fresh and clean. Caveat, this will not break apart a clog, but regular use could prevent drain clogs. Sprinkle a bit of baking soda on your cooktop and wipe with a damp sponge to safely clean up food spills and splatters." Dear Heloise, when I'm out driving early in the morning before the sun is up, there are so many people bicycling, running, or walking with dark clothes and no reflective material
I know, that is bad.
to make you aware that they are there. Please remind them to wear white or light clothes and something reflective, or carry a flashlight. This may save their life. And finally, dear Heloise, sometimes my husband will take me with him on his way to work. About a mile or so from the house, he will drop me off and I will walk back home. This helps me stay motivated.
Okay. And from dear Amy, my teen son is abandoned by his friends. Can Dad help? Dear Amy, my 15-year-old son had numerous friends, but in the past year, all of them have taken to drinking vodka, smoking pot. My son went from being very popular to being somewhat of an outcast. Any thoughts on how to help him gain his confidence back? He really is not interested in drinking or smoking pot. Concerned Dad. Dear Concerned, you should spend lots of time with your son. Include him in your activities and look for things he might enjoy that you can do together. Can you two work on a long-term project like building something, hiking, camping, training, etc.? The relationship with you will be very important as your son works through this period. Summer and the new school year should bring new opportunities. Does he have a job plan for the summer? Work with him to find a good plan, whether it's a camp or volunteering or trying an outward bound course. Make sure he is busy and engaged over the summer. Whatever his outside interests are, make sure he has an opportunity to be himself around people who will not pressure him otherwise. This is a transition time. Some of the kids who are drinking or smoking pot will go into a different group, and the students who don't do this hopefully will find one another next year. It is so hard to be a 15-year-old boy. Stay close and understanding. Do your best to help him foster healthy, pure relationships. Dear Amy, regarding Lost in California, the gay teenager who worried about coming out to her family, I am the mother of 3 daughters, the oldest a lesbian. Our oldest went through some terrible times from about age 8. She finally realized that she was attracted to girls. She seemed depressed, so we went to some family counseling in our small town. Finally, in graduate school, she came out to her sisters, and I figured it out. FLAG, PFLAG, is a wonderful supportive organization for families and friends and GLBT people, so please suggest it for teens and others who are trying to come out and for their families and friends. The people you meet there let you know that you and your family are normal. Okay, I guess that'll be enough there.
And from today in history, the quote is from Hosea Royce, an American philosopher who lived from 1855 to 1916. And his thinking is like loving or dying. Each of us must do it for ourselves. And on April 9th, 1959, NASA presented its first 7 astronauts. They were Wally Schirra, Donald Slayton, John Glenn, Scott Carpenter, Alan Shepard, Gus Grissom, and Gordon Cooper. And on April 9th, 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered his army to Union Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. And in 1682, on this day, French explorer Robert de La Salle claimed the Mississippi River basin for France. In 1913, the first game was played at Ebbets Field, the newly built home of the Brooklyn Dodgers, who lost to the Philadelphia Phillies 1-0.
Yeah, that was terrible.
In 1939, singer Marian Anderson performed a concert at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. after being denied use of the Constitution Hall by the Daughters of the American Revolution. In 1940, on this day, during World War II, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway. In 1959, on this day, architect Frank Lloyd Wright was 91 and he died in Phoenix, Arizona. In 1965, the newly built Astrodome in Houston featured its first baseball game, an exhibition between the Astros and the New York Yankees, with President Lyndon B. Johnson in attendance. In 1983, the Space Shuttle Challenger ended its first mission with a safe landing at Edwards Air Force Base in California. And in 1996, in a dramatic shift of President Bill Clinton signed a line item veto into law. And today's birthdays: Hugh Hefner is age 90. Wow. And country singer Margot Smith is 74. Actor Dennis Quaid is 62. Talk show host Joe Scarborough from The Morning Joe is 53. And actress, sports reporter Lisa Guerrero is 52. And actor Mark Pellegrino is 51.
Yeah. Dog treats may end the chaos at the door. Question: we have 3 toy poodles. Every time our doorbell rings, all 3 rush to the door, barking hysterically. We have to pick them all up before we can open the door. We had a professional trainer come in to show us what to do, but he could not do anything, so we are at our wits' ends. Answer: this is not an easy problem to solve in a house of multiple dogs. With one dog that does this, all you have to do is stand in front of the door and block the dog's way until it calms down. Obviously, this is not possible with a pack of them. There was a time when I had 8 dogs. Holy smokes. As the pack grew, the drama that occurred when the doorbell rang increased. Oh my God. Guests who looked in the window at the pack could not believe their eyes. The dogs ranged from my big dog Garfield, who looks like a cross between a German Shepherd and a donkey, down to little Dixie, the dachshund, the one with the loudest bark. I finally solved the problem by keeping a candy jar full of dog treats by the front door. When the doorbell rang and the pack sprang into action, I wish I had a camera of that, I would grab a handful of treats and throw them to the other side of the room. Yeah, that would work. Then, of course, they would all rush and start to snuffle about and vacuum them up while I quickly let my guests in. That would work. I did this as just a temporary fix, but soon the dogs figured out that the doorbell ringing meant that treats were going to appear on the other side of the living room floor. That's the first, and that the first dog who got there would get the most. So the whole pack would run to that spot in the room as soon as the bell rang and would wait there until I threw the treats at them. They no longer focused on the door at all. That situation taught me how, with positive reinforcement, you could teach an animal to do just about anything you want, and my whole life got easier. However, this method does not work with all dogs. Some dogs have a higher drive for food than others. Toy poodles can be fussy eaters and may prefer barking at the door rather than sniffing for dog treats. So try this. Keep a spray bottle full of water by the door and spray at the animals while they are barking. This may be just the thing to distract. I love that.
I'm not sure.
8 dogs, my
I don't know how.
God.
Yeah,
That is
a lot
way out.
for one person. I
Oh my God.
I don't know. Well, in some business news, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, from Sioux Falls, Trans Canada, remember them?
Yeah.
Said Friday
Had a big
that it has
hospital.
received conditional approval from the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Administration to restart its Keystone Pipeline after identifying the source of a small leak that has let out 16,800 gallons of oil seep into a South Dakota field. The Calgary-based company expects to complete repairs today, and crews will restart a reduced pressure to ensure everything is working properly, said TransCanada spokesman Mark Cooper. About 100 workers were at the site where crews excavated soil to expose more than 275 feet of pipe to find the leak about 4 miles from the Freeman Pump Station in Hutchinson County. Brian Walsh, an environmental scientist at the South Dakota Department of Natural Resources, said the impact seems to be limited to soil and around the pipeline. Seems to be. And I thought maybe we would read some good news, everyone. Something for some of us who love the post office still.
Oh, yes.
The cost of mailing a letter is going down. Beginning Sunday, the price of a first-class stamp drops 2 cents to 47 cents. The reduction is a result of an expiring surcharge that had been put in place since January 2014 to help the beleaguered Postal Service recoup $4.6 billion in losses dating to the Great Recession. Postmaster General Megan J. Brennan said in a statement that the forced rate reduction would exacerbate Postal Service losses. The agency estimated that it would lose $2.02 billion in annual revenue as a result. Commercial and other postage rates are also declining. In its latest financial report, the agency reported a $307 million profit between October and December of 2015, due in part to increases in holiday shipping. But postal officials said at the time that without favorable interest rate charge changes and the postal surcharge, they would have a net loss of approximately $700 million in the first quarter. An independent agency, the Postal Service, does not use taxpayer money for its operations, but under federal law, it can't raise prices more than the rate of inflation without approval from the Postal Regulatory Commission. The service is still seeking relief from congressional mandate to pre-fund retiree health benefits, something that neither the government nor private companies are required to do, as well as greater flexibility in setting rates.
And auto safety. Slow down on self-driving cars, an agency is cautioned. But technology already is on the road, officials counter. Accelerating the adoption of self-driving cars would be more likely to harm than help public safety. There are unsolved technical issues, engineers and safety advocates told the government. They run counter to a push by innovators to speed government approval. At a public meeting on self-driving cars, hosted by Highway Safety Traffic, even a trade association cautioned that a slower, more deliberate approach might be needed before rolling them out in just 6 months. Deviating from the government's traditional, much longer rules process does hold risks, said Paul Scullion. Issuing new regulation usually takes about 8 years. And let me see here, where did cars go? Here they are. These procedures and safeguards are in place for valid reasons. Stepping outside of the process might let the government respond faster, but at the expense of thoroughness. Many can't wait because early self-driving technologies already are on the road. Many cars, for example, now have automatic emergency braking designed to stop or slow the vehicle before its driver has noticed a hazard. Another option on some cars steers them back into their lanes if they start to drift without the drivers first using a turn signal. Everyone asks, when are they going to be ready? Rosekind said of self driving technologies, they're not coming, they are here now. Without federal instruction, people are just going to keep putting stuff out on the road with no guidance. Many of those who addressed Friday's meeting, the first two of the agency, have a scheduled as to how it can work. They describe a host of situations that self driving cars simply cannot handle yet. Poorly marked pavement, including parking lots and driveways, could foil the technology which relies on clear lane markings. Bad weather can interfere with vehicle sensors.
Interesting.
Self-driving cars can't take directions from a police officer. Inconsistent traffic control devices, horizontal versus vertical traffic lights, for example. Until the technology has advanced beyond the point where such ordinary conditions are problematic, it is dangerous, impractical, and a major threat to the public health, safety, and welfare to use them. In road tests so far of self-driving cars, thousands of disengagements have been reported. Times when the befuddled vehicles automatically hand the control over to a human being. Rosekind said automakers are learning from such situations. Should never happen.
Thank you, Kevin. And orange juice recently reached the highest level of the year, rising as concerns mount about Florida's orange crop. This year's harvest was expected to be the worst in more than 50 years, as the Florida battles a tree disease known as the citrus greening. The disease drains nutrients from the trees, causing them to drop premature fruit and ultimately kills the trees. There is no known cure, and more than 80% of the state's trees are infected.
It's too bad.
Long term, there is a mounting concern that the disease could continue to ravage Florida's citrus industry, potentially knocking out 90% of America's orange juice production.
Gosh.
Frozen concentrated orange juice, the standard for futures traders, recently topped out near $1.50 per pound, the highest price since late December.
Wow.
And the floor broke beneath copper prices Thursday as rumors circulated that China, the world's largest consumer of the red metal, will liquidate a substantial portion of its stockpiles. Analysts believe that slowing construction and electronics manufacturing have reduced the demand for refined copper from those sectors, melting prices from $2.15 per pound to $2.05. Copper is often seen as a barometer for the world economy, making it an indicator of what may come out of the stock market. I didn't know that. And finally, after slumping to a 7-month low at the end of March, corn prices climbed for 7 consecutive trading days, recouping half of the market's recent losses. Prices collapsed after a U.S. Department of Agriculture report projected a sharp increase in corn acreage, but many farmers and traders are skeptical about the government's forecast. Some farmers may still shift away from the low-priced corn and plant more profitable soybeans. Each could produce overall corn acreage. Meanwhile, the corn not in the ground yet, and there are concerns that much of the corn belt could be too wet to plant the crop quickly.
Oh, that's weird.
The market's a quick drop under $3.50 per bushel encouraged bargain hunting ethanol plants, livestock feeders, and investors to load up on cheap corn, as many expected the price floor of $3.50 to hold, as it has on numerous occasions. Midday Friday, corn for delivery in May was trading for $3.62.
Okay, did you read this one? No. Local construction still has recession hangover. The Great Recession ended several years ago, but its after effects still are being felt in the local real estate development and construction industry. Everyone is scared of a bubble again. Stein and other panelists spoke at this year's Commercial Real Estate Summit. A record-breaking 750 people attended the event. Stein said concerns that the current construction boom could go bust have meant that some contractors have been slow to hire permanent full-time workers. Despite the nation's steadily growing economy, there are nagging doubts. The key worry that it may not be strong enough. Meanwhile, some contractors are having a harder time finding high-quality materials for their projects. Some North American manufacturers shut down or downsized their factories. Glass manufacturing, for instance, hasn't returned to pre recession days. As a result, procuring high quality materials requires more meticulous planning. Other concerns: the construction industry's aging workforce, fluctuating materials, and manufacturing costs. The event highlighted market trends, legal topics, and real estate projects. The city planning department said Omaha officials are dedicated to seeing that good development projects come about. The city historically has had a good working relationship with the development community. 5 Nebraskans were named to the Summit's Hall of Fame. I guess I won't go into those. Okay.
And the Huskers Romeo backs Yori, considers transfer. One of the top players on the Nebraska women's basketball team said that abuse and mistreatment allegations against former coach Connie Yori are false and the result of the team's immaturity. Natalie Romeo, who set the school record for three-pointers this season and landed a second-team All-Big Ten honors, told the World Herald she asked to be released from her scholarship Wednesday, one day after Yori resigned amid a 2-month investigation into the program. She also supported Yori, who resigned Tuesday and received a $1.2 million settlement package. None of the allegations are true, Romeo said. Coach Yori is one of the best coaches I've ever played for. Romeo said she hasn't firmly decided to transfer, but she's considering playing on the West Coast. She's from Martinez, California. She'll wait to see who Nebraska hires as its coach. Mark Boehm, Executive Associate Athletic Director at NU, confirmed Romeo received permission to contact other schools with the intent to transfer. We appreciate the hard work Natalie put into our program in the past years. We wish her the best in the future. Romeo said the last several days have been difficult. She said the university's investigation, which included a lengthy interrogation session with a compliance and administrators watching practice, played a factor in the team's struggles at the end of the season, as players knew some supported Yuri and some didn't. It kind of tore us apart, Romeo said. The 5'7" point guard averaged 16 points, 3 assists, and 2.9 rebounds, and a team high of 35.1 minutes, making a school record 104 three-pointers. Romeo said she never witnessed players being treated poorly by Yori or her staff. Practices this season, Romeo said, were extremely ridiculously easy, far easier than they had been the previous year. Frustrations over small, inconsequential things, such as being disciplined for not hustling in practice, bloomed into full-blown complaints. It just started as small talk, and it grew and grew from there, Romeo said. It was an issue of immaturity on the team. It wasn't an issue with the coaches. Romeo is one of 2 Huskers to receive transfer releases. The other is guard Jasmine Sincor, who, according to her AAU coach, Tom Jackson, is already looking at schools, including Georgia State. Jackson said Sincor told him her interest in transferring was unrelated to player abuse, but related more to the interpersonal skills of the head coach, who paid lip service to Sincor on playing time and her role on the team. It was just a difference of opinion, said Jackson, who added the assistant coach who originally recruited Sincori, Shimmy Gray Miller, took a job at Florida after her freshman year. Romeo's comments, the first in public from current team members, were similar to those made by Nathan Schultman, who practiced with the Huskers last 4 seasons and went to more than 300 practices. Schultman said practices were easiest this year out of the 4 seasons, and players were unwilling to be coached. Schultman said players were soft, entitled, and uncoachable. The World Herald has made calls to other players, but none have commented. The World Herald on Thursday called NU's women's basketball trainer Julie Tuttle, who said she can't talk, won't talk, and hung up. Nebraska continues to search for a new coach. South Dakota coach Amy Williams is leading candidate for the job, according to a tweet from Sioux Falls sports talk radio host Jeff Thurn. Williams is a former Nebraska player who just led USD to the WNIT championship. Yeah, she's resigning.
That is unbelievable. And one down. Nebraska is 1, Michigan 0. In Lincoln, Nebraska mixed another old-fashioned Friday night with the right blend of pitching, defense, and one big double to serve Michigan its first loss as the nation's #1 team. An RBI double by shortstop Alicia Armstrong in the bottom of the third inning was all the offense needed to support the masterful pitching of Cassie McClure for a 1-0 Nebraska victory for the women's softball. McClure scattered 4 hits in her second career shutout. She improved to 14-6 by handing the nation's top scoring offense its second shutout of the season. I thought she was strong and she was hitting her spots, the Nebraska coach, Rhonda Revelle, said. When I took the trip to the mound, it was just like, hey, this is like a walk in the park. Said McClure, I'm not going to say I wasn't nervous because I did have that thought, but I trusted my teammates to be behind me. Michigan's other shutout loss was an 8-0 5-inning setback to Florida, the previous #1 team. Nebraska's victory over the Wolverines came 2 days after the Huskers ground out what Revelle called an old-fashioned, low-scoring 3-1 win over Iowa. This victory, which played out in front of 970 at Bowlin Stadium, was secured by the signature defensive play of left fielder Gina Metzler. The sophomore from Papillion La Vista tracked down a fly ball to the warning track by All-American Sierra Lawrence. Knighton tagged out pinch runner Olivia Richivelli, who was taken off for third despite a sign from Michigan coach to stay at second. Revelle said she wasn't expecting such a low-scoring game, 1-0, because both offenses have been so potent. The dramatic finish gave the Huskers their third victory ever over a top-ranked team. The other 2 also were 1-0 wins in 2011 against Florida and 2013 against Oklahoma.
And from Augusta, Tom Watson thumped his hands against his chest. He was thanking the thousands who lined up 10 and 15 deep, craned their necks and stretched onto their tiptoes to watch one of history's best play the 18th green at Augusta one last time. Watson has known for a while that this scene and the tears that accompanied it would be coming. He thought he might stave it off for a few days, but the 2-time Masters champion shot a 6/78 Friday that left him 2 shots off his goal to become, at 66, the oldest player to make the cut in tournament history. Not a tragedy, Watson insisted. I'm a realist, he said. If I could still play this course, I wouldn't be retiring. He's not done with competitive golf, but he says he's all but finished up teeing it up against the young guys. To him, that gave Friday afternoon's windy walk through the pines an even greater sense of finality than his last British Open at St. Andrews last year and his final U.S. Open in 2010 at Pebble Beach. I made the decision that kids hit the ball too hard, Watson said. The course really shows the difference. Yes, Watson said, hitting a decent drive and having to pull out 3 woods for the next shot on number 18 takes its toll after a while. At one point, Watson made 21 straight cuts here. He finished in the top 15 for 15 straight years, starting with his victory in 1977. He hasn't made the cut since 2010, though. When his final 2-day stay at Augusta was over, he took his time to reminisce. He talked about when and got the first glimmer that he might be able to do this thing for a living. About his friendships with Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and how his arrival to the upper echelon of golf in the mid-'70s changed that dynamic. Before that time, Arnold was my hero. Jack was the villain, Watson said.
Yeah.
Now they're all beloved. And Watson's contribution could be felt as he walked back the back nine and heard chants of "Thank you, Tom" almost everywhere he went. Of course, Watson wasn't the only person heading home Friday. Ricky Fowler followed his opening day 80 with a 73 to miss the Masters cut for the first time in his 6 appearances. Phil Mickelson splashed balls into the water on 15 and 16 for double boogies that left him needing to make a 22-foot birdie on the 18th to stick around. He didn't. Mark Leishman stubbed a chip into the 18th green and made a boogie to finish one shot off the number. After Zach Johnson's round was over, officials ruled he touched the water with his club at Rays Creek on number 13. That 2-shot penalty left him 2 shots from the cut, and Bubba Watson was the lucky one. Watson wrapped up his second straight 75 early to finish at 6 over and looked like he'd be heading home. But leader Jordan Spieth made 2 bogeys on 16 and 17 to bring Watson, who did not make the top 50, back into the 10-shot rule, whatever that means.
And the Jays, the Creighton Jays, capitalized on the Pirates' errors. Creighton took advantage of some early sloppy play by Seton Hall and rode it to a 3-1 victory in the Big East opener for both at TD Ameritrade Park. 2 errors, a pass ball, and a wild pitch in the first inning helped the Blue Jays score all 3 runs in front of 1,500 people. CU starter Broly Lacey, who allowed 9 hits in 6 innings to Jacksonville a week ago, in the Blue Jays' only home loss, bounced back. He went 7 innings, giving up 1 run on 3 hits to earn the win. The Blue Jays had 4 hits on the night. The final one, Matt Gandy's single in the 4th. That theme of getting just enough offense early before going stagnant has become familiar to Coach Ed Service. Seton Hall entered the game leading the nation with 86 stolen bases, paced by Derek Jensen. But 4 Creighton pitchers limited Seton Hall's opportunities on the bases. Service said the 3-run cushion helped take the Pirates away from their aggressive play on the bases. The 3-game series between the 2 of the favorites in the Big East could help decide who has a higher seed in the conference tournament. After Daniel Woodrow led off with a walk, he took second on a pass ball. Seton Hall coach Bob Shepard said his team was tight from the outset. "We didn't take care of the ball in the first inning," said their coach. "Can't do that against good teams." After getting a run in the 8th to cut the deficit to 3-1, Seton Hall loaded the bases with 2 outs. But Blue Jay closer David Garber got the last 4 outs of the game to earn his 7th save. And he'll make it to the College World Series.
You never know.
They did at one time, a long time ago.
And from Lincoln, Husker Spring invite for track. Before the announcer even finished informing the crowd that Nick Percy had rewritten Nebraska's record book, the sophomore thrower was leaping into the arms of his coach. At the ASU Pac-12 versus Big Ten Invitational, the opening meet of the Huskers' outdoor track season 2 weeks ago, Percy moved to the top of the school's all-time chart on his first hammer throw of the season. As the meet announcer began to tell the crowd of the record, Percy was so consumed by the moment he didn't hear how far he'd hurled the 16-pound hammer. "By that time, I was running up to throwers coach Scott Campos," Percy said. "I just hugged him. I was like, 'How far was it, though?' I missed it. I had to go read the board." The final tally was 221 feet, 8 inches, nearly 14 feet further than Percy's previous personal best. More importantly, it was more than 5 feet farther than Nebraska's previous school record of 26-2, set by former teammate Will Lohman, who texted Percy shortly after the meet to congratulate him with some good-natured teasing. "I thought my teammate is going to kill me because I broke his record," Percy said. He'd had it for 2 years, and it was his baby, but I think he knew I had a chance to take it, just being the freshman last year. Percy's toss ranks 3rd in the Big Ten and gives a sophomore from Ventnor, England, a top
England,
5
wow.
conference mark
Wow.
in 2 events going into Saturday's Husker Spring Invite at Ed Weir Stadium. The discus is Percy's strongest event and the one he focuses most of his practice time on. His throw of 189.11 at the Pac-12 versus Big Ten Invitational is the second best mark in the conference and ranks number 13 in the NCAA. His talent in the discus was obvious right away. He finished third as a freshman in last year's Big Ten championships and qualified for the NCAA meet. And that brings us up to 12 o'clock, everybody. We hope that you have a lovely weekend. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next weekend.
What are they using this screen for over here?
They have us on live TV. We're on live TV. We're being broadcast over the internet. That's what they had. Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Why are they making faces at the screen?
You have not. I have not seen you do
I
that.
didn't I did.
No.
You want to make a bet?
Okay. Well, maybe they'll stop it after that. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I don't want to dress up every Saturday. I don't want to do my hair.
Vote against it.
We protest this.
Yeah, we drug signs.
That'd be funny.
Oh my gosh, we look pretty good on the red and blue.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. Yeah, I'm so
I didn't
against
know
this.
we were on live TV.
Yeah. It's on the internet, but still, people can see us.
Blind people could care less.
Yeah, it's
They don't
for
care. They don't
it's
see
for
us.
publicity. This guy's gonna drive us. The board just keeps approving everything he does.
You want to know something the board doesn't give us about anything? They just sit on there. They don't care what goes on too much.
So I'm gonna do yard work. What are you gonna do today? No, I want rest in that word. I want rest.
I'm gonna be moving. I gotta make several trips back and forth.
What?
Yeah,
By yourself?
yeah.
No.
Oh yeah, honey.
Why are you not calling me to do this?
No, honey.
I
It's
have
just
able legs.
it's just little stuff. Crap.
It's a lot to carry.
No, and I don't carry that much.
You know what? Listen here, Missy. You have my number. You call me. I am free. I would love to help.
Maybe if you could help with the dog,
I
that'll be.
would love that.
That washer
Long
and
as-
dryer might be kind of dusty and cobwebs underneath.
Do you know what? You should see mine. Hi.
Alrighty.
Okay.
That dryer has probably been sitting there for I don't know how many years. It was there
You
when we
use it,
moved in.
don't you?
Oh yeah.